A few years ago, there was a confirmation class of young people in a parish further to the east. And they were studying what our kids do for confirmation, a thing called confirm, not conform. And it was a good class, and they were all excited, and they worked for a whole year on this, and pretty cohesive group. And one of the things they agreed on at the beginning is at the end of their of this class, they would have a weekend retreat just before the bishop came. So this was all in the plans. There was also, one of the boys was a good hockey player. And he was so good, and his team was so good, that they ended up in the finals, which happened to fall on the weekend of the retreat. So what should he do? Go on the retreat and let down his hockey team so that he could be confirmed the next day? What should he do? Well, the kids got together and the parents started talking about it, and the final decision was that the retreat would be at the hockey center. And after the hockey game, they all gathered together and said, okay, now, where was God here? And, somebody said, it was with Billy, who was playing hockey, and the support that we gave him, that's where God was. Another one said, no, yeah, but it was us. And yet another person said, no, it was the puck. Because the puck doesn't take sides and is there for everyone. I open with this story because it tells me of a different realm than you and I usually live in. It isn't a realm of competition and who's better and who's not. It's a realm where the community comes together, finds a solution where everybody is welcomed. Jesus and Pilate are together, and Pilate asks if he's a king, and he said, you say that. And Pilate keeps questioning him, and Jesus finally says, my kingdom is not from this world. Now, I don't know about you, but I was raised to think that what that verse meant was that not of this world meant heaven. And that ultimately that's where we were headed, hopefully. But that's not what John says. That's not what Jesus says. He said, my kingdom is not of this world. This world's standards, there's a different world here in operation. And that world does not work the way the world that you and I usually pay allegiance to. That world works in very different ways. And we've seen some of this past year. We've been reading the Gospel of Mark. And Mark tells us about what this world looks like from Jesus' point of view. And remember in Mark, we have the healing of 2 blind men. We have a widow. We have a ruler of the synagogue. We have the children. All kinds of people. Oh, and we have feeding of 5,000. And in every single one of those cases, Jesus never imposes himself upon anyone. Healing miracles in Mark happen because the person coming to Jesus trusts Jesus. They know something about this person that is different. In the beginning of Mark, the beginning says, this is the good news of Jesus the Messiah. And one of the people that we read during Lent last year, Archbishop Rowan Williams, said, we can talk about the good news as a regime change. And that's what we're living in as God's people in the kingdom. We're living in a regime change. So Jesus will come and heal. Jesus will welcome the little children. You notice the disciples are always trying to push people away from Jesus, and Jesus is always trying to draw people in, people who trust him. And I always wondered what this let the little children come to me, for such is the kingdom of heaven, is a rather strange thing. And then I watch a child play. And a child playing is a different kind of person than I am. I was that way once, I think. No, I'm not going to go there. If you read one part of our theology that comes from St. Augustine, we're all born in original sin. If you read John's gospel, we're born with original blessing. We're always God's children from the very beginning. And one of the things that we see in children as they're growing up, this year we had a young family, and the child arrived as an infant in his mother's arms, and he loved the soft space up here, and he would, as he started growing, he started crawling, and he would crawl, and he's always looked back over his shoulder to see if mom or dad were watching him, to see if, because he trusted that they will come after him if he went too far. And then he started as a toddler, and he went even faster. One day he got all the way up to the altar before they caught him. That's what I think it is to be a person in the kingdom. To be a person who is alive with our real selves, and we spend most of our lives covering that up with a false self. And then when we finally realize that this isn't who I am, then it takes us a whole lot of work to unpack and get rid of all that stuff, but that's a story for another day. The kingdom of God is a new regime. It's something different in our midst. This feast of Christ the King, we usually think of the church's feasts as coming from way, way back, like Christmas and Advent and Easter, that go back to the 3rd and 4th century. The Feast of Christ the King is less than 100 years old. In 1925, Pope Pius XI looked around Europe after the First World War and realized that things were getting worse, not better. That the World War had not helped a thing, and that what he was seeing was a rise in nationalism, a rise in fascism, and a rise in Nazism. And he said, I'm going to create this feast to tell the people who the king really is, who really has the power in this world. And so we have the Feast of Christ the King. There's enough of that going on in our world right now that this is a good time to be celebrating the Feast of Christ the King. So anyhow, one of the things that I have learned about Jesus' confrontation with Pilate is that essentially that Jesus is saying to Pilate, I'm not going to play by your rules. This is another regime. Your rules are violence. You're trying to scare me to death. And I'm not going to buy it. And you'll remember, this is news to us because 3 times this past year in Mark's gospel, Jesus has said that he's going to suffer and die and that we have to pick up our cross and follow him. By which I understand to mean that we have to shed this false self and be who we really are. And we're not violent people. We aren't people who separate. The regime that Jesus brings is a kingdom that brings us together, that makes no judgments, just like the puck. It's there for everyone. So, I think about Jesus and what's going to happen to him, and I wonder what a real king looks like. There's a thing in your bulletin, not in the bulletin, in the weekly this week, that talks about the Buddhist idea of what a ruler is. A ruler is one who opens their heart and is vulnerable for the whole world to see. I think it's a perfect example of who Jesus is for us and why we can trust him. So, if you want to see what a real ruler looks like, I offer you this. this is what it means to be king. To rule with a people with compassion and mercy and love and justice. I end with another sports metaphor, strange for me, but if you've read Stephen's reflection this week, it's about rugby. And something I didn't know about rugby is that rugby is a pretty rough game, but it's just a game. What happens after the meet is both teams to come together, go to the pub, get a beer, eat together, and kind of reconcile all the differences that they fought out on the field. It's a new regime, a new way of looking at sport. And so today we come the same way. We come with all the battles we've been fighting out there this week, and we come to one table, to one food. We might call it our puck. It doesn't choose sides. It brings us together as a community of love and hope and an example for the rest of the world. So, my friends, welcome to the game. It's not the same game that the world plays, but oh, what a difference it can make. Amen.